in the Yuds and also in the Chovs, the Rebbe pushed very hard that Bochrim and Yungelait should go Chazer Chassidus in the shuls. And actually, this is one of the reasons why the Rebbe was Magi'ah Likutei Sichos, so people should have material what to say in the shuls. And that's why in the beginning it wasn't called Likutei Sichos. When the first Likutim used to come out, it was called Teichen Inyonim Bedach Lachzer B'Bate Knesiyos. That these are Inyonim Chassidus that you should chazer in the shuls. And B'Pashtas, the reason why the Rebbe wanted is because the Inyon of Afotzes HaMayones, to be able to spread Chassidus, spread the word of Chassidus. That's why the Rebbe wanted people should go chazer Chassidus in the shuls. But I want to mention that there was a side benefit there. Reb David Raskin told me that once there was a time that there was somebody who was involved in kashrus. I don't remember the exact details of the story, the protim of the person and what it was about, but I remember the kuda of it. Reb David told us to me that there was a time that this person was involved in kashrus and things were not so good and the Rebbe wanted it to be fixed. The Rebbe didn't want it to be that way. And obviously it seems like he couldn't get the guy to do it. I don't know the details, like I said. But the Rebbe said, I don't know if it was to that person or to somebody else to give over to that person, but the Rebbe said like this, that if it's not fixed, I have a way to notify the whole city at one time the problem that's going on there. The Rebbe said, because I have Bochrim and Yungelai to go to the different shuls to Chaz Chassidus, and all I have to do is tell them that this is the problem, they should notify the people. And everybody's going to know the problem. So the Rebbe said, you should know that I have a way of publicizing this. And this was before the time when you had emails and you had all these ways of publicizing things. So the Rebbe said I could make it very short because I have the people who Chazar Chassidus in the shuls. And I think the way the story goes, that the guy heard it and he got scared and he fixed it, whatever the problem was. Like I said, I don't know the details. But here we see that besides the real inyan, why the Rebbe wanted people to Chazar Chassidus in the shuls, Pasha, to tell them Avot of Chassidus, but there was also a side benefit that this was a way that if there was any inyan that's negated to Yiddishkeit that had to be publicized, this was a way to publicize that the people who would go to the shuls would, in the same Shabbos, publicize all over that inyan that was supposed to be publicized. In the Chovs, the Seder was that Shabbos the Fabrengen was downstairs in the big shul. After the Fabrengen, the Rebbe would go upstairs to his room, and after a few minutes, he would come out to Mincha upstairs. Mincha was upstairs in the shul, the small shul upstairs. Unlike later years, when the Rebbe would daven Mincha downstairs right after the Fabrengen without leaving the shul. But then he would leave the shul, go upstairs to Mincha, to his room, and then daven Mincha. So I just want to mention 2 times it was things that I saw, very small things. They're not important, but by the Rebbe, every little thing is important. Just things which were not just the ordinary, not just the regular, that happened by the Rebbe's Mincha Shabbos after the Fabrengen. One is that once, when the Rebbe came out from his room to daven Mincha, I saw he came, besides his Siddur, he came with a little Sefer. You could see it was an old Sefer, a little one, not the regular size, a very small size of a Sefer. From far you couldn't see what it is. But I was standing close to the Rebbe by davening, and I saw it was a Sefer Ksav Yad. It was a handwritten Sefer, Abichul Chassidus must have been, handwritten, small, with a lot of pages, very thick. And I saw the Rebbe opened it, and during moments like between Aliyahs and things like that, the Rebbe would blätter the pages, look through the page of what it was. So it was something that was not ordinary, that the Rebbe would do something like that, to bring a Sefer to davening, especially such a short davening like Mincha, Shabbos, and you'd look into it. Another time also happened Shabbos by Mincha, after Fabrengen upstairs. There was one person who never had a nervous breakdown, so he was standing there behind the Rebbe. I was standing also pretty close there, and he was machan sich meshuge, things like that. And people tried to calm him down, and he couldn't. So I just remember the Rebbe turned around. The Rebbe heard, I guess, what was going on, turned around, looked at him very sharp, and the guy calmed down. As he was nervous and, after a breakdown, but when the Rebbe looked at him very sharp, he calmed down. The Rebbe's look scared him or whatever it is, he calmed down. I remember these 2 small things, but this is something that comes to mind. In the Michtav Kloli that the Rebbe gave out, dated Rosh Chodesh Mar Cheshvan Tovshin Mem Gimel, which is printed in Likutei Sichos Chelik Chof, page 555, the date is Rosh Chodesh Mar Cheshvan Hey Tovshin Mem Gimel. And then there is a ha'ora on the bottom, which says, Kedai levarer minik shatz bale meseiro, Benusach achrozas yemei achedesh b'Shabbos kedesh mevorchim mochra chedesh beis yemei rish chedesh v'chulu. And then the Rebbe adds, Ulahoyer Mishulchan Aruch Chelik Even HaEzer Simen Kuf Chavav Sivova B'nei Kelim Tzop Betzarech Yiyun. Which means, Rosh Chodesh Marcheshvan, usually there are 2 days of Rosh Chodesh. And here the Rebbe, the date says Rosh Chodesh Marcheshvan, so you don't know which date it is. So the Rebbe says, it's Kedai to be mevared that when you say Birchas HaChodesh, and Shabbos and Vorchim, when the Chazan says the Birchas HaChodesh, and there are 2 days Rosh Chodesh, so how do you say it? You have to be mavara how you say it. In other words, the shaila is b'pashtus that some people say, let's say Rosh Chodesh is Tuesday and Wednesday. They will say that Rosh Chodesh is Tuesday ulamachrosei on Wednesday. Yom hashlishi ulamachrosei b'yom harvi'i. Some don't say it. Some just say that Rosh Chodesh is b'yom hashlishi u'b'yom harvi'i without saying ulamachrosei and the day after. So you have to be mavarer from chazonim who are bala meseira, who know how it used to be done before, to see how you do it. And then the Rebbe quotes a Maramokim from Even HaEzer. There it talks about a get. When you write a get and there are 2 days Rosh Chodesh, what's the way to do it? The first day, if it's written on the first day Rosh Chodesh, how you do it, and the second day Rosh Chodesh, and then the Ramos says better not to give a get on Rosh Chodesh, not to go into the Shailas, etc., etc. So the Rebbe said it's Tzorech, and we have to know how we do it here. If I remember correctly, when originally this letter came out for Rosh Chodesh Marcheshvan, there was a different ha'orah here. And right away the Rebbe changed it. And if I remember correctly, but I'm not sure, could be I'm wrong, that the ha'orah said, after it said the word Rosh Chodesh Marcheshvan, it said that the meaning is that when the 2 days Rosh Chodesh, you say Rosh Chodesh is the first day, Ula Mochrosei the next day. I think that's what it said in the ha'orah. But then right away, they gave out a different version of the same letter. They took all the other letters away and they gave it a new version and with this version. In other words, it seems to me, if I remember correct, and again, maybe I'm mistaken, it was for sure a change in the ha'orah. There was a different lashon. But I think the originally way it said in the ha'orah was that if it's 2 days of Chodesh, you say the day, Ula Mochrosei, which seemingly we read the pshat, why the Rebbe wrote Rosh Chodesh Marcheshvan probably meant that the first day is the Iker, and that's what we do. We say the first day and also the next day. I'm not, maybe not, but that's what I think it said. And then the Rebbe changed it to the way it says here now, the way it was written, printed, look at the Sichas, that you have to be mavarer the minik from the Chazonim, Bala Meseira, who know from tradition how it was. How do you say it? The Pale, I don't remember how Rebbe Yochanan Gordon used to say it. He was the Gabbai of 770 for many years. And he used to be the one to say Birchas HaChodesh. I don't remember how he said it, but I'm pretty sure, I'm 99% sure, that when Reb Motel Schusterman said it, this was his Seder. If the 2 days of Chodesh were any day of the week, he would not say Ula Mochrosei. Let's say if it was Monday and Tuesday, he says Rosh Chodesh did this and this, V'yem HaSheni, U'bayem HaShlishi, on Monday and Tuesday. The only time he would say Ula Mochrosei, if it was the next Shabbos and Sunday. Shabbos and Vorchim was a week before Rosh Chodesh. Rosh Chodesh was the next Shabbos, and there were 2 days of Rosh Chodesh, Shabbos and Sunday. Then he would say that Rosh Chodesh will be B'yem HaShabbos Kodesh, Ula Mochrosei B'yem HaRishon. And the reason was, because if you're going to say U'bayem HaRishon, someone might think that it's the day after Shabbos and Vorchim, because it's the Sunday after the day you announce it. So that someone might confuse and think Rosh Chodesh is that Sunday. So that's what you say, Rosh Chodesh is next Shabbos, and the day after Shabbos, which is Sunday. That's how I think, I'm 99% sure that's what he did, and I think that's the way Little Pale, most people do, that's in Chabad, that's what we do. But what I'm trying to say is that L'chatchila, the Rebbe wrote a little bit different in this ha'orah of the letter, and then later on, not much later, but right away after it was printed already, the letter came out, it was changed to the ha'orah, the way the Rebbe writes it here, that it's kedai to be mavarer by Balim Chazonim, the Shat Shlichut Tzibur, Balim Meseira, how they used to do Amol when it was a kviyas like this. In continuation, when I told about cutting the Rebbe's nails, I want to mention that I heard from Reb Pesach Schmerling, who is the son-in-law of Rebbe Yomin Klein, Olav Shalom, one of the maskirim of the Rebbe, that he told him that even before Chav Zayin Oder, there used to be a person who would come to cut the Rebbe's nails. Now he doesn't know if he would come also to cut the Rebbe's nails from his hands, but certainly would cut the Rebbe's nails from his feet, because it was hard at that age. It was hard to do it, so they had to have a special person do it, so they used to come. So when he came, the Maskirim prepared him exactly what to do, and they told him the whole Seder. On one hand, how you do it this Seder, on the other hand, you start with this hand, and you can't do one finger after another. You have to do it in a special Seder, and they prepared him to know which Seder. And when he came in to the Rebbe, and he was going to cut the Rebbe's nails from his feet, and he told the Rebbe that he's going to do it in the proper Seder. So he says that the Rebbe told him that this does not apply to the nails of the feet. Nails of the feet you could cut one after another, and you don't have to go with that order. That's what he told over to the Maskirim. Now, Locha Lamaisa, we have to decide if we could rely on this 100%, but that's something that we have to talk about. But this is what he told over, that the Rebbe told him, that when it comes to the nails, you don't have to follow this order that's written with B'daige or the other way, but you could cut one finger after another. We heard lately that when Harav Gottlieb was preparing the Sefer Tilnus Levi Yitzchok, the biography of the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Chadakov told him, and obviously it came from the Rebbe, that even little small things are important. In other words, you shouldn't skip anything. Even small things, small pratim are important. Sometimes they can be very important. For that we know that Benegea, the Rebbe's father, all little things are important. So I want to mention a small thing that I heard from my Zayde Benegea Rebbe Levi Yitzchok. And that is that he was once going to give a hechsher on sugar for Pesach. And the way the Seder was there is that they had the sugar cooking in a certain vat, and then the hot sugar would go through a conveyor belt and pass through and come out on the other side, and there it would get packed or whatever it was. When the sugar went through the conveyor belt, it was open. There was hot sugar going through the belt, but it wasn't covered. You could see the sugar going through. And they had a special person standing by that conveyor belt to take care, to make sure everything goes fine. So when Rebbe Levi Yitzchak came to the company, wanted to see the whole mahalach of the way things go, the whole seder of how the cooking and the preparation of the sugar is. So he went from one place to another. Then he came to the place where the conveyor belt was and the sugar was going through, the hot sugar was going through. And the man was standing there. As he walked in and he looked around, he saw this man, I think it was a goy, so he saw him take out from his pocket a piece of bread, and as the sugar is going through, the hot sugar, he took the piece of bread, stuck it into the sugar, which gives it a taste, and he ate it. So Rebbe Levi Yitzchak said, how could I give a hechsher here when this could happen? That he could take out bread and put the bread into the sugar, and then I'll give a hechsher for Pesach. So he didn't want to give the hechsher. Now, what happened at the end, whether Lemaise he gave the hechsher because they made changes, or he didn't give the hechsher, I don't know. I also don't know at what period it was. Was it the time that this was a Mesiras Nefesh because he was expected to give a hechsher and the government would pressure him to do it or not? I don't know. Maybe it was a time or not, so it's not maybe a big thing, but still, this is something that Mazeda told me, that this happened, that he was so makbid and everything when he saw this happen. Obviously, he did not give the hechsher for then, and what happened later, like I said, I don't know. In the Igris Kodesh of the Frierdiker Rebbe, 10th volume, page base, there's a letter from the Frierdiker Rebbe to Reb Nissen Nemenov. And there he writes concerning the question that some Talmidim had, whether they're allowed to eat something before davening. And the Frierdiker Rebbe writes that if they're careful to say Krishma Ktana with Tfil before, then they're allowed to eat some Mazonos before davening. Krishma Ktana is if a person wants to be Yetzer the mitzvah of Krishma before davening. For whatever reason, maybe sometimes he's going to daven late, and by the time they get to Krishma in davening, it'll be after the Zman Krishma. So you want to be Yetzer the mitzvah of Krishma before. Or whatever other reason that you want to be Yetzer the mitzvah of Krishma first. That's called Krishma Ktana. So the Frierdiker Rebbe writes here that if you say Krishma Ktana with tefillin, then you're able to eat afterwards something. Now in the Ha'oraz they write that the Rebbe spoke about the Sinyan, whether you have to say Krishma Ktana with tefillin or not. In Shabbos Parsha Shlach Tovshin Yud Beis, the Rebbe mentioned that in his Rishimis he writes that the Frierdiker Rebbe told him that his father, the Rebbe Rashab, would say Krishma Ktana with tefillin, but the Rebbe says nevertheless most people don't say Krishma Ktana with tefillin. They don't wear tefillin when they say Krishma Ktana. And the Rebbe asked the Shaila, how could you do that? The Gemara says, Kol Akera Krishma b'lei tefillin kilu meid eide sheker ba'atzmei. If you say Krishma without tefillin, you're basically testifying falsely, because you're saying in Krishma ukshartem leis al yedecha that you have to put on tefillin, and you're not wearing tefillin. So it's like you're testifying falsely. So how could it be that people say Krishma Ktana to be Yetzer the mitzvah of Krishma without tefillin? And the Rebbe explains that this whole din that if you don't wear tefillin while you're saying Krishma is made a sheket is only if you don't plan to put on tefillin later. But if while you're saying the Krishma, you do plan, you know that you're going to put on tefillin later, then there's no problem with saying Krishma without tefillin. And the Rebbe brings a whole shakla, a whole discussion about it. The only thing is, the Rebbe doesn't speak there about doing it before eating. Because in the Frierdiker Rebbe's letter, there it talks about eating before davening. So he says, in order to eat before davening, you have to say Krishma with tefillin. The Rebbe here just speaks about saying Krishma to be Yetzer the mitzvah of Krishma, that you don't really have to wear tefillin when you do that. But he doesn't say anything if you want to eat or not. L'poel, many people, even when they come to eat something, they don't say Krishma with tefillin. And the Frierdiker Rebbe writes in this letter that you should. Now, a few years ago, was printed a letter of the Rebbe's father, Rav Leibel Yitzchok, to the Rebbe. And there the Rebbe's father writes to him that I heard that you fast a lot. And he said, where did you get this? And don't do this. He's telling him not to fast. Bechal, the Rebbe would fast a lot. He says not to fast. And he says not only you shouldn't fast, but you should even eat before davening. And he says, but with laning Krishma first. And then he adds, if it's not hard, also to put on tefillin. So from this letter, we see two things. That it's better if you do say Krishma Ktana with tefillin before you eat anything, before davening. But on the other hand, it's not a must. Because he says, if it's not hard, then you should also lay Krishma before eating with tefillin. Is mashma that he holds that if you don't do it, is nish gefährlich. It's just only if it's easy, it's not hard, then you should also put on tefillin. From the Frierdiker Rebbe's letter is mashma that you should be careful with saying Krishma Ktana with tefillin before you eat. But he just has the word nishar, and you should be careful to do it. But the Rebbe's father makes it very clear that it's better if it's easy, but if it's not so easy, then it doesn't matter if you say Krishma Ktana without film, and then you're able to eat. In Lekutei Sichos Chelik Daled, the Sicha for Shavuos, page 1031, the Rebbe talks about the Kvura of the Baal Shem Tov. Since the Baal Shem Tov was Nistalik, passed away on the first day of Shavuos, so when did they bury him? And the Rebbe says that according to the din, probably they buried him on the second day of Shavuos, and the Rebbe connects it to the second day of Shavuos, the union of why the Kvura was second day of Shavuos. But the Rebbe just said that's how, according to din, should be. And in the order 30, the Rebbe writes like this: Eich shehoye bepeil, as how it was actually. I didn't find it. The meantime, so far I didn't find it in any Rishimis. And then it says, the Yeshemrim, some say, Asherad Munish B'Seidin Omer Al Dvar Zeh Pam B'Sichesov, that the Rebbe Rashab once in the Sicha said concerning this inyan, V'Layoda Ishas Kvarosei, that no one knew his Kvura. That's what he said. That's Yeshemrim, some say that. That's how the Rebbe writes. And then it continues the Ha'ara like this: V'Hu, where is this thing said in the name of the Rebbe Rashab? In the Sicha of the second day of Shavuos of the Frierdiker Rebbe Tofresh Tzadik Tes, which was written Mirshimas Hashemim from people who wrote it down, the Eine Mugit was not Mugit from the Frierdiker Rebbe. And he quotes what it says in the Sicha from Tofresh Tzadik Tes, which is actually, later it was printed in the Sefer HaSichas Tofresh Tzadik Tes, page 333. And this is what the Rebbe quotes there, that Shoal Echad, one person by the Fabrengen of Tofresh Tzadik Tes, asked, when was the burial of the Baal Shem Tov, the first day or the second day of Shavuos? And he answered, the Frierdiker Rebbe answered, that this was a question that was discussed in Lubavitch a long time ago. And the maskana was, it's geblieben, that there is no Kabbalah, that we don't know, there's no tradition. And then the Frierdiker Rebbe said that my father, at the end of the discussion, said, Es is v'layoda ishos kvarosei. No one knows his kvura. And then it says in the Sikh of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and while they're talking, he said, that he probably waited with the burial to after Yontiv. That's what it says in the Rishima of that Fabrengen. And Rebbe asks Akash, number one, how does it fit to the dinner that should be the second day Yontiv, not after Yontiv? Also, how does it fit to the beginning where the whole discussion was whether it was the first or the second? And then he says, well, probably it was after Yontiv. Maybe it has to say that he waited biznoch Yontif Rishon till after the first day of Yontif. The Rebbe said, you could say maybe they waited for some relatives and then you have to wait. Now it's strange that the Rebbe in the order writes, some say that the Rebbe Rashab said on this, and then the Rebbe all of a sudden writes, where does that something say? That's in the Sikha of Tofrish Sadik Tes, Shvuas Tofrish Sadik Tes. So why did he write Lechatchila? That some say he should have written Lechatchila, that in the Sikha of Tofrish Sadik Tes it says so and so, and then continue with the whole order. But the way it says is that some say that the Rebbe Rashab said on this, in the Sikha Liyodi Ishas Korosei, and then it continues. And where is this thing said? In the Sikha of Beis Chagashvu Sadik Tes. So I just want to say what happened. Originally, when the Sikha was mugi by the Rebbe, only the first part was there, the beginning of the Hora. That how it was bepeil, I didn't find so far in any Rishimis. And Yesh Emrim, and some say that the Rebbe Rashab said on this one in the Sikha Liyod Ishas Korosei. After the Sikha came out, then came out a hashmote to this ha'ora, and then these words were added. Vohu, as it continues in the ha'ora. That means it was added. So since it was already written that Yesh Emrim, that the Rebbe Rashab said on this, that stayed, and then the Rebbe added as a hashmot, as a heisofe to the, so therefore those lines stayed, and then he said, where is this Yesh Emrim? In the Sikha of the second day of Shavuos, Sadik Tes, and the Rebbe goes on with the whole ha'ora here, quoting the Loshem from there and saying that it's Bilti Mugi, that's why it can be so meduyik, because it's not Mugi. But what I also heard then, and I don't remember from who, but in my mind there was somebody reliable, that when they thought about it in Lubavitch, and there was a discussion with the Rebbe Rashab, when the Kvura was, and what he said first and what he said later, so the Shmuel was, that's what I heard, that who was the one that discussed the Rebbe Rashab by the Fabrengen, was the Rebbe's father, Reb Levi Yitzchak, the Rebbe's father, and that was the discussion. He was the one that asked when the Kvura was. He spoke up to the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe Rashab said the whole thing. That's what they said then. Now, I don't know if it's so, but that's what I heard then, and it seemed like it was reliable. There were a few brothers here in America, Rabbonim, and their last name was Pupko, and they used to be a lot in the house of the Chavetz Chaim. I think they were also relatives of the Chavetz Chaim. Somehow relatives, maybe they were great nephews or something like that, I'm not sure, but I think they were kravim with the Chavetz Chaim, and they used to be a lot in Chavetz Chaim's house. So I was once speaking to one of the brothers, Rabbi Pupke from Pittsburgh, and he told me that he was once in the house of the Chavetz Chaim, and he witnessed this, that a delegation came from a certain city, that they were looking for a new Rav. I don't know why, whether the old Rav had left or old Rav passed away, whatever, they were looking for a Rav. And they came to the Chavetz Chaim to discuss it with him, which person to take. And they had two choices. One was a Lubavitcher, and one was an Elamsher, was a different one, not a Lubavitcher, a different type of Rav. So they came to the Chavetz Chaim, asking Chavetz Chaim for advice, which one they should take. So he says to me that this is what he heard the Chavetz Chaim say to them. The Chavetz Chaim said, Alle Yidden seinen Tzivis Hashem. All Yidden, all Jews are part of Tzivis Hashem, of Hashem's army. Aber the Tzivis Hashem, B'teich Tzivis Hashem, the Eibishter's army, which is within the Eibishter's army, those are the Lubavitch Chassidim. Now, I don't know what period it was. Could be it was a time that it was already after the communists took over, and there you needed Mesiras Nefesh and to be strong, to be able to hold on to Yiddishkeit and to spread Yiddishkeit. And you knew that the main ones that did that were the Lubavitcher. That's why he said it, or it was a different time, I don't know. But this is the Lashon he told me, he heard himself say, the Chavetz Chaim saying to this delegation, that they should take the Lubavitcher of. Why? Because all Yidden are Tzivis Hashem, but the Tzivis Hashem, within the Tzivis Hashem, are the Lubavitch Chassidim. In one of the previous voice notes, I mentioned the Sikha that the Rebbe spoke about Tznius. And the Rebbe spoke very bluntly. He spoke about having short skirts and things like that. And I said that because when it comes to something Halacha L'maaseh, you have to be very clear. I even mentioned what Reb Mendel Futterfar said, that just like Reb Zalman Moshe, when he would talk by a Fabrengen and try to say certain things to make it clear, he would say words which are not so appropriate. And he said because the Nefesh HaBa'am is the Yetzer Hara doesn't understand any other language. So by the Rebbe also, he had to speak very clear and very bluntly in order for the Yetzer Hara to understand. So I want to mention that there was another time in the same issue that the Rebbe spoke about, but also spoke very bluntly. And that was Shabbos Parshas Nosei, Tov Shin Lamed Beis, the Shabbos after Shavuos. And since Shavuos is the day of the Chasana of the Eibishter with Yidden. So the Rebbe spoke about the Chasana. So he said, therefore, he's going to speak something else about the Chasana. And he went into the subject of the problem of mixed dancing. He actually used the English word mixed dancing by a Chasana. And he explained it in very simple terms. He said that he wants to explain it in a way that even simple people should understand. Because who's the one that wants it, and who's the one that even asks questions about it? There's some people who don't know much in Torah. So you can't tell them that this is a halacha, that you're not allowed to. According to some poskim, it's a isur deraisa. Some say it's a law, some say it's not a law, but it's isur deraisa. Some poskim say it's not isur deraisa, but it's definitely isur chibuk and nishuk and kiruv and all kinds of problems you have here, which is up halacha. But the Rebbe said, but nevertheless, he wants to explain it in a very simple terms, besides the halacha, because the people we're talking to are anoshim pshutim, people who don't know. And therefore, you can't tell them halacha because they don't accept it. It doesn't mean anything to them. So you have to bring it down, push it in simple terms. And the Rebbe said he's going to explain in simple terms in the ways of the chopling that should be even understood by these people. Not only should be understood that they should be maskim and agree with it, it should be so clear to them that if they would see someone else do it, they would tell them, how could you do such a thing? Because he really understood it. What was the explanation? So the Rebbe explained it like that. We're talking about a chasana. What do you do by a chasana? By a chasana, there's a chuppah. What do you do under a chuppah? The Chassan says, Ariyat Mekudeshesli. What does that mean? He says that you are exclusive to me. You are now Badavke me. Exclusive to me. And that's what we even write in the Tnoim. The Lashon there is, Le'alimu, le'zemezuva, le'zumezeh. They shouldn't hide from each other. They should be together. That means that the whole kavanah of a chasana, to make a connection between the chassan and the kala in such a way that no other person should get involved in between them. And that's what you have the Sheva Brachas about, and that's what we say, Simcha B'Meini, etc., etc. And that's what everybody wishes, the Chos and Kala, the parents and the relatives, everybody, that this should stay, it should stay forever, this connection, that they should never separate, nothing should come in between them, no other person should come in between them, in such a way that if Chas v'Sholem, sometimes there's hardship, and the connection is not so good, we should work very hard to bring the connection back. And that's what we hope by a chassan. It should be a binyan atiyat forever. Now, what happens when you have the mixed dancing? What you're doing is, right after the chuppah, when you said that this is going to be just a husband and a wife together, what happens is you have mixed dancing, which is completely the opposite of what you just said when what the chuppah is. It stresses that there is something in between, because that's what they do. They dance with someone else's wife, and the Rebbe was very, very blunt, and he said these words, that Yereked Ishim Eishes Reyeyu. And if you're a little bit frimer, you don't do that, so it's a single man with a single woman that they dance, which is also full of Isurim, with Chibuk and Nishu, but he's not talking about the Isurim. But it's the opposite of what a Chassan is. A Chassan is to show that there's exclusive this man with this woman, and here you mix in somebody else, and even if they're single people, but it shows that we don't need a chuppah to be able to be together, and you could do it, you could have a connection without a chuppah, which is the opposite of what you just did by a chuppah. And also, we need to do things for the future, and by doing this, you're doing the opposite of what you expect in the future of this couple. And this is all in addition to the halacha that obviously this is also, that's not what we're talking about. We want to tell people who don't understand halacha, don't accept halacha, they should also understand that. But then the Rebbe said there are some times that people say that there are some other people involved, and they are rich people and they have money, and because of that we can't, change it, and we have to give in to have mixed dancing. And the Rebbe said, how could you say that? The money that he has is not even his, so what do we care what he says? The Pasuk says, Li HaKesef Li Azovnu Hashem. Hashem says, the gold and silver is mine. Like we say, HaKesef HaKavod L'Chaylam, everything is the Eibishter's. Even the body of the person himself is not his, it's the Eibishter's. So what are you going to say, that because he has money, that's why we have to give in to this? So therefore, this is not an excuse. And therefore, the Rebbe said, the right way to do it is that you're able to dance the way you're allowed to dance, the way it makes sense. Al Pi Seichel and Al Pi Haloch, obviously, is men separately and women separately. And not only you're allowed to dance this way, you have to dance, because it's a mitzvah l'sameach chosam v'kala. So you have to dance in a real, proper, kosher way. And the Rebbe said, if you do that, this will bring a bracha to the chosam, to the kala, and everybody else who is there. And we say, Sha'asimcha b'meini means that if we do this, then the Eibishter in his ma'in, which means in the heaven, has simcha, and this will bring everything, the best for the chosam kala, day Rishonim Meveirach. And I remember standing there by the Fabrengen, wondering, why would the Rebbe talk so bluntly? But the Rebbe did mention that someone asked him the question. But the Rebbe felt that he wants to explain that people should have what to say to other people. Because we find by the Rebbe that the Rebbe explained throughout his Nisiyas answers to all the questions possible, some through letters and some to Farbrenges. So he said this in order that we should be able to explain it. And then later, the Rebbe wrote a zettel b'ksav yad kodesh. I guess it was an answer to that person who asked. And the teichen of that letter was exactly the same teichen of the Sikha. I had a copy of it, but now I don't remember where it is. I couldn't find it. But it definitely was the same teichen as the Sikha. One of the first years of the Yeshiva Gdeila in Miami, we worked out a program during the summer that some of the Bochner went to America Shlichus, some stayed. And the way things worked out, that the Nuzman would start in the middle of Ov. Because the way the Bochner were going and coming, this is the whole thing. So what I did was, I wrote to the Rebbe a report on what was going on. And I asked the Rebbe Benegei the Sinyan of starting the Nuzman in the middle of Ov. And this is what the Rebbe answered. Number one, V'yehei kol hanal b'shot teva mitzlachas. Let all this be b'shot teva mitzlachas. I was writing with the report and what we're planning to do, so the Rebbe gave a bracha, it should be b'shot teva mitzlachas. Number two, when I wrote that according to this man would start in middle of Ov, so this is what the Rebbe wrote. Don't remember if he crossed out the word or not, but he wrote these words. Zman lifnei hazman shenikva b'chol yeshivas. This is a time, a zman or a time, I don't know which one we will teach, before the zman that's set up in all the yeshivas. The seder in all the yeshivas is that you start a new zman in Elul. You don't start a new zman in the middle of Ov. So the Rebbe was saying that why would you start the new zman in the middle of Ov when this is a zman before the zman that's set up by all the yeshivas to start? In other words, the Rebbe said not to do it, not to start then, and whatever we decided to do, I don't remember exactly how we worked it out, and the zman started from Elul. And then the Rebbe wrote number 3, Asker al atziyan v'yivasar teiv. I will mention this by the Eyal, and you shall give over good news. We know that by the Rebbe, everything that he was Magia and everything that was sent out in his name was very, very meduyik. And this is what should be written and also what should not be written. So I want to give over certain ha'oras that the Rebbe wrote on an LNS that Rabbi Krinsky gave out once, Benegei Pesach. LNS is Lubavitch news service that Rabbi Krinsky would write after the Farbrengens, and after Rebbe would come out with certain Miftzoyim or certain Isairis, and this would be written in English, and it would be like a newsletter to all the newspapers, and etc., etc. And the Rebbe would be Magiyah. So one year, it was Benegei, the Rebbe's Isairis that people should give out Shmura Matzah. So after they explained there what the matzah is, it said like this. This is what was written originally. The Rebbe, as in past years, has called to all rabbis and spiritual leaders to supply members of their congregation and community with these hand-baked matzahs for at least the kazayis, the minimum amount of matzah required by Jewish law to be eaten on each of the first 2 nights of Passover. So here, the Rebbe underlined the word at least. When it says here, at least, kazayis, the Rebbe underlined to make sure that you underline, you stress that this is only at least, this is only the minimum. And the Rebbe wrote, when it said here that the Rebbe called upon rabbis and spiritual leaders, so the Rebbe added these words, Ubichlal l'chol mishe hayechelis biyodei lasezeh. And generally speaking, for anybody who is able to do this, the Rebbe wants him to do it. Then the Rebbe added the whole inyan. The Rebbe wrote like this, Kain Eirer, he also was Me'eirer. That means the Rebbe is saying that you should write, that the Rebbe also appealed to people, which is Me'eirer, al dvar ha'inyan de mechiras chometz, concerning the inyan of selling the chometz. Shekam zeh lefi erech bekal b'yeser lekayim. That this too is relatively easy to fulfill. And the Rebbe says, how is it easy to fulfill? And it's in parentheses, al yadei shiluach min power of attorney, by sending a kind of power of attorney, and the Rebbe wrote the words power of attorney in English, sheyesh la'asigei etzel rabbonim v'kayetze b'zeh, that you're able to obtain it from rabbis and the like. So the Rebbe wanted that this should also be written, that the Rebbe was made to see that people should work on getting other people to sell their chometz. Then in this LNS, it said something that the Rebbe crossed out. It said there, concerning Passover educational program for Jewish youth. And it said there that the Lubavitch Youth Organization in the Holy Land has arranged excursions for thousands of school children from all parts of the Holy Land to visit the Shmura Matzah Bakery in Kfar Chabad, the Lubavitcher village in Tel Aviv. The schools participating in this program are not only the Lubavitcher schools, but for the most part, the schools belonging to the public school system there. And this whole paragraph, the Rebbe put 3 lines across, not to print that. Now we have to think, why didn't the Rebbe want this to be printed? It's possible, I could just say a svara, because the Rebbe wanted that it should be focused on the things that you have to do. This is good news, and this is spreading the inyanim that taking place in Eretz Yisrael, but could be people will focus on this part and not focus on the iker, which is that you should give out matzah and you should be me'erer b'negei mechiras chometz. I don't know if this is the reason. Maybe there are other reasons, and I don't know. Maybe the Rebbe wrote something in the next pages which I didn't see. But the bottom line is that the Rebbe was medayek that this should not be printed, this should not be written, because everything that the Rebbe was medayek, what should be written and what should not be written. It's assumed by most people that what is the reason why when a person has a din Torah and he loses his din Torah, he's upset at the Rav, that he made him lose money. On the other hand, if he comes with a shaila of kashrus, let's say, about a certain thing, and the Rav paskins it streif, and he loses the same amount of money, he won't be angry at the Rav. So it's always assumed the reason is because when you come with a shaila to the Rav, you don't have an opinion. You're a yid, a frumer yid, and you ask the Rav the shaila, whatever the Rav paskins, you know that's the din, that's it. But when you come to a din Torah, you have an opinion. You feel 100% that you are right. So when the Rav paskins that you are wrong, you're angry at the Rav. And therefore, it was a chidush that the Rebbe in one of the Fabrengen said a different pshat. And that was in the Fabrengen of Chof Tes Tishrei Tovshin Chof Beis, which was a Tzeischem L'Sholem Fabrengen for the Orchim that came for Tishrei. And this is what the Rebbe said then. That they say that once they asked a big Rav, what's the reason that when you come to a Rav with a Shaila, on a big ox even, he's worth a lot of money, and the Rav says the din is so and so, sometimes he says it's not kosher. So it doesn't happen that the butcher is going to start the vayitzaku, or he'll demand from the Rav to look through it again and see what the din is. Maybe you made a mistake, maybe it's kosher. But you come to a din Torah, even if it's a small amount, and there are 2 sides, and the Rav would paskin that one of them is right, so in most cases the other side will start a vayitzaku. Hey tochen that the Rav paskin that the other one is right, because I know that I'm right. And the answer that's given to this, al derech hatzachos, the Rebbe said, which means not a real answer. Derech hatzachos is that it's connected to the characteristics and the nature and quality of a person. That when it doesn't come to another person, in other words, when you lose, but no one else gains, then the Yetzer Hara could take it. But when you not only lose, but you also give this to somebody else, that the Yetzer Hara can't take anymore. In other words, the Rebbe was saying that the reason is because the other guy won. By a shaila, no one else won. You lost money because it's streif, so you lost money. But no one else gained. But by din Torah, if you lost, the other one gained. That's what bothers the person. That's why he's angry, because the other person gained. Now, it's interesting, this pshat, that it's different than what we'd assume. This is a chidush. And at that time when the Rebbe said it, people were thinking that this is a chidush. But maybe that's the reason why the Rebbe said that this is an answer al derech hatzachus, because al derech hapshat, so to speak, the simple pshat is because he has no opinion. That's why he doesn't scream. But there he has an opinion. But al derech hatzachus, this shows the nature of a person. The nature of a person is that if I lose is one thing, but the other guy should gain. That's a problem. That's really what the Yetzer Hara can't take. For Yuchva Tovshin Lamed, a big Eilam came to the Rebbe. It was 20 years from the Frierdiker Rebbe's Istalkes from Yuchvat Tovshin Yud, which is automatically 20 years from the Rebbe's Kabbalas and Nesiyas. So a big Eilam came. And it was a very special Yuchvat. It was even known as Yuchvat HaGodel. Also, one of the things that happened then in the Erev Shabbos, Erev Yuchvat, there was the Siyum of Mashiach Sefer Torah. And the Achnos of Mashiach Sefer Torah. That's not the reason why people came, because actually it wasn't known earlier that it's going to be that day. It was known very close to that day. But nevertheless, this is what happened then. Another thing that happened then, there was the first hookup that took place from the Fabrengen. This was to Eretz Yisrael. So the hookup of Yuchvat, the Fabrengen Yuchvat. But that year, Chof Shvat, which was Tuesday, there was a special Fabrengen for Tzeischem L'Sholem for the guest. And they announced before that there will be a Fabrengen that day after Mincha. After Mincha, which means Mincha was 3:15, this is after Mincha, so this is into the afternoon. And that's the day that a lot of the Orchim from Eretz Yisrael were going home. And this was after Mincha, which was pretty close to the time they were supposed to travel. The Rebbe said a Maimer by the Fabringen, and he said Siches, and the Elam, who were supposed to travel, got a little bit nervous because this was very close to when they were supposed to go to the airport. But the Rebbe continued Fabringen. Then the Rebbe said that once he came into the Friedrich Rebbe when he was in Leningrad, it was a time when that same evening he was supposed to travel from Leningrad to Moscow. And the Rebbe said to understand the timing, it was a time when the Xeris of the Russians against Yiddishkeit was very strong, and wherever the Friedrich Rebbe did, they were looking after him, especially when he was traveling. They were looking after him, and he traveled himself, and it was going to Moscow, which was the capital there. So this was going something that's Mesiras Nefesh. And especially there was a time when they already decided that their patience on what the activities of the Friedrich Rebbe was already came to an end. So it was very dangerous. So this trip was a very special trip, a dangerous trip, and a very special trip. So the Rebbe says, I went into the Friedrich Rebbe, there was no one else in that room, and there was about an hour or half hour, a quarter of an hour before he was supposed to leave his place where he lived, which is Amachavaya 22, to the train station, which was going to Moscow. And I saw that he was sitting very calm, like middle of a regular day, that you couldn't see on him any being nervous or being worried or things like that. And he was involved in something that he was doing that needed attention, that needed concentration, but he was doing it without being nervous that he's supposed to travel soon. Now, the Rebbe says, there is an inyan of Me'ach Shalat Alev, that your mind could control your heart, control your actions. But so much, Ad Kedei Kach, so the Rebbe said, I couldn't hold myself in, and I asked the Friedrich Rebbe, Ad Kedei Kach. So the Friedrich Rebbe told me that he heard, it seems like from the Rebbe Rashab, who heard it from the Rebbe Marash, there's something that's called Hatzlocha in time, success in time. What does that mean? You can't stretch time to say that the time becomes bigger, but you could use the time more. And how could you use the time more? That you should use it for as much as you can. That's if when you're doing something, you're completely involved in that inyan that you're doing, and everything else doesn't exist. So even though it's something that's small, a small time, but you're involved in whatever you're doing, if that's all that exists to you and that you put your attention to that, then you'll be able to accomplish a lot. You'll utilize the time to its fullest. And that's called Hatzlocha in Zman. And he gave an example. It seems like the example came from the Rebbe Marash, from the Rashba, who was one of the Rishonim, that he used to say 3 shiurim every day. He answered a lot of tshuvas. We have a lot of tshuvas printed of the Rashba. And that is a tip in the bucket of what he really wrote. And he was a doctor, he was an actual practicing doctor, healing people. And he even managed to go take a walk every day. And all this is in addition to his davening and the shurim that he learned for himself, that everyone is supposed to do. Now, in order to say a shir for Talmidim, it takes time. It takes, you got to put yourself into it and you have to spend time for it. Certainly, if it's for Talmidim of the Rashba, who must have been great Talmidim, and not 1 shir, but 3 shurim a day. Also, when you are a doctor, you have to put yourself full into it. And other things even include the walk that you took. In order to accomplish what a walk that you have to accomplish, you can't be nervous and you can't be worried. So how did the Rashba accomplish all this every day? And the answer is not from natural point of view, that he was in such a way that when he said a shir, everything else didn't exist. When he went to walk, nothing existed. The greatest thing didn't exist. Even the shir didn't exist because he was involved in it completely. And if you do that, you could accomplish so much. But it's only if you are completely involved and everything else doesn't exist and you're doing it in a calm way. And that's the answer, that he was sitting in his room, involved in things that needs concentration, needs attention, and things which are very important. And even though he was supposed to travel very soon to Moscow, and it was a dangerous trip, that nevertheless he did it because at that moment, what he was doing, nothing else existed. But then the Rebbe said, but the Metzias is that people who know that in an hour or an hour and a quarter, whatever, they have to fly, and you still have to pack your packs, and you have to say goodbye, etc., and you still have to have Ma'ariv. So it's hard to pay on yourself. You should be completely involved and concentrate on this, that thinking that the El Al, the flight El Al doesn't exist at this moment. So the Rebbe said, and he sees that some people are looking at the watch, looking at the clock the whole time. And those people who don't look at the clock, they hold themselves back from looking. It's even harder. It's a bigger bilbil, because when you look at the clock, at least you know how much time is left till you have to go. So you know there's still some time. But if you don't look, you don't know what time it is. So you think maybe it's even worse. So it's much harder. So the Rebbe said, therefore, I'm going to try to be mekatzer, and not put Yidden in the soyen, and the Eibishter will help with you, but Matzliach in Nitzlas man. So here is one of the times that the Rebbe showed that you have to be involved in what you're involved completely, and then you'll accomplish everything. And I just want to add that the same thing happened, that when the Rebbe started saying the Broch on Erev Yom Kippur, Ba'ariches, like this always, the Broch Erev Yom Kippur after Mincha took 3 minutes, 5 minutes, whatever, it was short. Then, years later, it was a whole Sikha. And the Sikha could take 20 minutes, could take a half hour, could take more. It was a long Sikha that took. And the first time I remember, even though I wasn't there, but you could hear it over the hookup. And I heard that people were getting nervous. They're getting itchy because the Rebbe is speaking, and it's Erev Yom Kippur, and you have to go home, and there's so many things that you have to do, and every moment, you got to utilize for something. And the Rebbe is speaking a Sikha, and continuing, and adding more and more and more. Some people even couldn't hold themselves back, and they just left in the middle because they have to go to the mikveh, they have to eat the Sudam Afsekes, etc., etc. But the Rebbe showed then also that if you utilize every second in a way that you know that whatever you're doing, you're involved, you'll accomplish everything. And the Rebbe himself behaved that way, that whatever he did, he was involved in it completely. And here he showed that he's saying a Sikha on Erev Yom Kippur, after Mincha, when it's not so far before Yom Kippur, and there's so many things that you have to do, but you're able to accomplish everything. And that's only if you put yourself into it completely, that whatever you do with complete concentration, but mainly you'll accomplish it, and then you'll accomplish everything that you have to do. We all know that on Chamishasa B'Shvat, when the Rebbe came back from the oil, he said there will be a Farbrengen. No one expected it, but the Rebbe announced there will be a Farbrengen. And by the Farbrengen, the Rebbe spoke a lot about Lichbeish ha'olam ha'idei Torah, that the time has come that we have to conquer the world through learning Torah. And the Rebbe went on like that, and later on the Rebbe explained that he had an urge to Fabreng while he was by the oil. He didn't even know why, and there was nothing special that time that he was going to speak about. So when he Fabreng, what would he speak about? About learning Torah. And it actually turned out that later on the government wanted to start drafting even yeshiva bochrim. So the fact that the Rebbe spoke about learning Torah before was Magdim Refuah L'Maked. This brought the cure before the problem, that before they even made the Gzeira, the Rebbe already spoke about it. And then, many months afterwards, the Rebbe would refer to that Farbrengen and say the time has come, we have to conquer the world with Torah. So one of the times that the Rebbe spoke about it very strongly is Shavuos. This happened Chamishasa B'Shvat Tovshin Lamed Aleph, and the second day of Shavuos, the Rebbe spoke about it very strongly. And the Rebbe said that because we have to be kavish, conquer the world through Torah, that means that we have to take part of your time and part of Inyanim of Welt that you have and transform it in Torah. Not only yourself, but you should pay on others also. Which means, in simple terms, that a Baal Esek, a businessman or a working person, should steal time from his work to Torah. He should steal it in a way that this becomes, that some part of the Zman HaEsek, the time of the work, should become a Inyan on Torah. A Yesha Ve'el, a person who learns anyway, should add in his learning Torah. And the Rebbe said that even a person who already made that resolution to learn more Torah, or somebody who already started doing that more. What I'm saying now is that it has to be completely different. You have to change not only the time, learn more, your mahus has to become different. In other words, it's possible for a Baal Esek to steal some time from his work and learn Torah. Still, he remains in the category of a Baal Esek. But what we're talking about here is that his whole category should change. He should drop the title Baal Esek and he should become a Yeshavel. His mahus should change. And we see that concept that you could be a learning Torah and still remain a Baal Esek, because we find there is Yisachar and Zvulun. Yisachar represents those who learn Torah, Zvulun those that work. And even in the Midbar, when the Jews were in the Midbar and they learned a lot of Torah, there were also these two categories. Even though everybody learned Torah, there was nothing else to do there. And the Medrash says, "Lenitna Torah, ela la'ich le'amon." The Torah was given mainly for the Jews who were in the Midbar, those that ate the mon who were in the Midbar. And still you have there Yisachar and Zvulun. Shows that you could be learning Torah and nevertheless be Zvulun. So what the Rebbe said, what I'm saying here is that we have to make it that you change your mahus, that now you are not a Baal Esek anymore, you are now a Yeshavel. You become a Yeshavel, you become a learning person, not a Baal Esek anymore. And Rebbe gave an example. We find that when Avram Avinu bought the Moras HaMachpelah, it says Vayokam's Day Ephraim, the field of Ephraim, which was the Moras HaMachpelah, had an aliyah. But the Rebbe says there, the Metzias didn't change. It just became better, choshever. Here we're talking about your metzias should change. You should become no more Baal Esek. Your mahus should be a Yeshavel. And the Rebbe says that Rabbein Bechlal would always try to bring light into things with a story. So here you have the story that's written in the Hagdama of Pekei Achivrim, which is concerning, the Rebbe didn't give the name, concerning Rabbi Yosef Balagola, who became a Balagola, because the Alter Rebbe told him to become a Balagola. And after he finished the Shlichus, he went back to becoming a Yeshavel and learning Torah, etc., etc. So here we see you could change from being a Balaisek to being a Yeshavel, being somebody whose whole mahus, his whole being is Torah. You might ask, what's going to happen to Zvulun? You need people to work more and give money, etc., etc. So true, but still, you have to try to be the one from the Yeshavel. And then the Rebbe continued in the next Sikha how it's connected to the women, to the wives. And that will be in the next voice note. In that Farbrengen of the second day of Shavuos, Tovshin Lamed Aleph, where the Rebbe spoke that you have to be kavish, you have to conquer the world with Torah. And the Rebbe explained that means you have to change your mahus, that you have to change from being a Baal Esek, which means a person of business or a working person, to being a Yeshvel, to a person of Torah. And it has to change your whole mahus. So the Rebbe continued and spoke about the women, that it's up to them that they should see it should happen. So the Rebbe said, like, Bechal, anything or any change or anything that you do in the house has to go through the Akeres Habayis, the wife. You have to have that she should be maskim. But in this case, the Rebbe says she should be maskim is not enough. She has to have a rotzen, she has to want it. And it's not enough that she really wants it, but it has to be in such a way that if the husband or the brother doesn't want it, she's me'ered in the form of covet, in an honorable way, respectful way, but she has to be me'ered. Like it says, Eizu yishik sheira, what's called a kosher, a fine woman, a good woman that does the husband's will. And Chassidus teaches, it doesn't mean that she does what he wants. She makes the rotzen, she makes up the proper rotzen that the husband should have. If he doesn't have the right rotzen, she makes up it should have. And the same thing here, that she should be the one to be me'ered the husband, that he should become a Yeshavel instead of a Baal Esek. And by Matan Torah B'chal we find that before the Eibusha gave the Torah, there was a hachana, and the hachana was Koi Soimer Lebeis Yaakov V'Sagad Lebnei Yisrael, that first you have to speak to the women, and it's up to them that they should see that things should happen properly. And the Rebbe continued and said that the woman, the wife, should not only be the one to ask her husband the teikev very strongly, but Darka Neima, but Darka Sholem has to be in a peaceful way, but very teikev. But even in a case where she feels it'll have an effect on her, her lifestyle will have to change. Because when she sees her husband adding and learning Torah normally, so it doesn't really change her physical lifestyle. It's not such a big thing that it's not something that we're expecting something special from her. But when she will see that her husband changed his whole tchunet, before he was a balesik, he slept like a balesik, he learned like a balesik, everything by him was like a balesik, like a businessman. And therefore she was guaranteed with a lifestyle of a balesik, of a businessman. And here suddenly she sees he became a yeshiva bacher. And that could change the whole lifestyle from beginning to end. So even that, she has to ask her husband and want her husband to do it. Because it doesn't mean that he has to change his way, his whole day of what he does. But as we said, the Rebbe said, like he said, that even if it changes 1 hour, that 1 hour that he learns, he becomes like a yeshiva bacher. He doesn't learn like he learned before, or he doesn't learn like a person who runs a bank, or a kaiman kerer. A kaiman kerer is someone who cleans chimneys, or he doesn't learn like a schuster, which is a shoemaker, not even like a president of the United States. And the Rebbe said that every person, every yid could become a president of the United States. Al Piteira, he couldn't, even according to the government, he could also become a president of the United States. If you have the right to vote, and the Rebbe said the word vote, not in Yiddish, not only Yiddish stimmen, but even to vote, you become a president. So when you were a Baal Esek, you were shayches to all these inyonim. You could even win a lottery. But now, you change your lifestyle. You forgot about everything. And the Rebbe said, he'll think about it, listen to what's going on here. That he became such a level that it doesn't bother him. The Eilam HaMischer, the world of business, he doesn't care about. Like it says, Yikorahim Ipninim, that it's more precious than pearls, even than simple pearls. And how do you see that? That by him, he doesn't care about it? Because when he's learning, he's in such a level that he doesn't even pick up the phone. See, normally, when you're Matzia, when you offer a certain business deal and he doesn't answer, could be he has a better deal, could be some other reason. But if you don't even answer the phone and you don't know what's on the other side of the phone, then that's kolokal akitzin. That's the extreme. It's mamish. He's living like he lives in the desert, like we lived in Midbar Sinai in the desert. There was no telephone, no radio, there was no newspaper. They were not even goyim there. So the woman could think in her mind, so at kedekach, that's really too much. Maybe she could forgo going twice to Florida. She'll only go once. And the Rebbe said, normally you go twice to Florida. She'll give up once. Then the Rebbe said, I sound like a battling. That's why I'm saying you go twice to Florida, because the truth is you don't go twice to Florida. They go once to Florida, and the second time, they go someplace else. But I don't know where, so therefore I'm not saying I mentioned Florida. And when they chazer over what I'm saying here, they could add which are the places that the people go. And the Rebbe says, I don't mind, I might cover that people will say I'm a battler, that I don't know about this. But anyway, the Rebbe said that even she's a Isha Kshera, that forgoes, I'm going to Florida completely, and doesn't care about what the neighbor says, because her husband is a Balteira. And she'll say that she is completely taken away from the Veltish Inyonim, and becomes Yisrael, Eiraisa V'Kuchebricho, Kul Echad. That's something that's hard for her to take. So therefore, the Rebbe said, I'm saying that you need her askome, because you can't expect that just stam azay that it'll happen that she's maskim. You need her real askome. She should be maskim, and maskim in a nice way. And the Torah says that if she is maskim, it'll work. Like it says, first you talk to the woman, then sagid lebed Yisrael to the men. And then the Rebbe said there is the gishmak taich of the Marsho. He says that what does it mean? Poshup Pshat is this is what you should talk to Beis Yaakov, which is the woman, and the other way is to talk to Bnei Yisrael, to the men. But the Mashal says it means Beis Yaakov should speak to the women so much that they should be able to talk to the men. In other words, that the woman will have the hashpah on the men, that we rely on the woman, that she will be able to pay on her husband. That's why she's called Beis Yaakov. If it means woman, they should have said Noshim. Because we're talking here not to the women as women stam, but as women who are the Beis Yaakov. They are the house. This is the house. This is the foundation of the Yiddish house. And when the woman does this, then it'll have a hashpoah on the men, and the men take will be in that level that they will be no more Bale Esek, but become Yeshevel. Their whole mahus will change, and the Gashmias and all the Esokim will not be Teifes Mokim at all. By the Sudas Yontef of the first day of Sukkot, Tovshin Lamed, that the Rebbe ate upstairs on the second floor in the apartment of Tziddik Rebbe, someone asked the Rebbe about Havdolah Motzi Yom Kippur. What do you do with the leftovers? After a person drinks the kos Havdolah, the one that makes Havdolah, and there's some wine left over, what do you do with it? And the Rebbe answered like this. He said, Bechlal, by Kiddush, the Shver, the Frierdiker Rebbe, was medayik always to make Kiddush himself. By Havdolah, he wasn't medayik to make himself. Besides Motzi Yom Kippur, as if, like it says in the Sichos of Stov Shin Hey, that he made Havdolah himself. And the Rebbe says the reason why he would make Havdolah himself, why it's important to make Havdolah himself. So the Rebbe says maybe you could say because it's connected to the specialty of Yom Kippur, because it's Kam B'Yochid, whatever it is, a specialty, that's why he would make himself. But B'Negeya, whether you could drink from the leftovers of Havdolah, so the Rebbe said like this: a whole year, the minig is that we do not drink leftovers from Havdolah, except if that same kos was used for benching. Obviously, by the Rebbe's Fabringim, when the Rebbe would give koshel broche, it was the kos that he made Havdolah on, but it was before that, that same wine was used for benching, but maybe that's different. But otherwise, we don't drink the leftovers of Havdolah, except Motzi Yom Kippur, you could drink the leftovers. That's one thing I said. Then, the Rebbe said there's a known meaning that people say V'yitin L'cho together with somebody else. In other words, two people to say it together. So the Rebbe said, it was once in Peterburg, I was standing on the side when the Shver was saying V'yitin L'cho. He called me by my name and he told me to come over to his siddur and to say it together with him. So the Rebbe, in other words, was ma'asher, the sinion of saying together V'yitin L'cho. Now it's interesting that if I bring in later, when the Rebbe was saying V'yitin L'cho, I don't remember which Fabrengen that was, but I think it was the next Fabrengen that came out that the Yontev was, the Fabrengen was Shabbos, Motzei Shabbos, so the Rebbe said V'yitin L'cho, and that time when he said V'yitin L'cho, he turned around to Rabbi Mentlik, and he told Rabbi Mentlik to come over, he motioned him to come over, he should say V'yitin L'cho together with the Rebbe in the Siddur. And this was Behemshech, so what the Rebbe said here by the meal, that it's a inyan to say together with somebody else. But as far as I remember, this is the only time that he asked somebody else to say with him, and that's just to strengthen, I assume, to strengthen what he said by the meal, that there's a inyan to say together. So that time, he asked Rabbi Mendel to come over and said together, which is Bechal an interesting thing, because Bechal we know that the Rabbeim were makpi, that no one should say anything together with them in the same siddur, etc., etc. So I think in Rabbi Zalman Duchem writes in his Sefer, L'Shema Ezen, that once somebody looked together with the Frierdiker Rebbe in the Megillah, and the Frierdiker Rebbe told him later, Hitochen, you looked with me in the Megillah. So they were makpit, no one should together. And here the Rebbe called him over at this one time that he should say Vayitin Lachot together. And that must have been the Yetzim and Aklal, an exception. But it definitely came Behemshir, because the Rebbe said by the meal on the first day of Sukkot that Vayitin Lachot, you should say it together with somebody else. And he said that the Frierdiker Rebbe called him over to say it together with him. In the Likutei Sichos Chelik Tes, the first Sicha to Parshas Hazinu, starting from page 204, is taken from the Farbrengen of Shabbos Tshuva Tovshin Chav Zayin and Tovshin Chav Ches and Vov Tisha Tovshin Chav Ches. And the Nekud of the Sicha is about what it says in Kisva Arizal, that Kol Mi She'ein Beicha B'Aseres Yimitshuva Ein Nishmos Shlema. Anybody who doesn't cry in Aseres Yimitshuva shows that his neshama is not complete. And the Rebbe asks a kasha from the Loshen Kol Mi She'ein Beicha. Anybody who doesn't cry Aseres Yimitshuva shows his neshama is not complete. Refers to everybody, including a Tzadik Gomer. And the question is, why would we expect a Tzadik Gomer to cry so much that if he doesn't, shows that his neshama is not complete? Mela, somebody does Averis, you have to do tshuva, and you cry, and then if it comes a Aseres Yimitshuva and he doesn't cry and he doesn't care, it doesn't bother him, shows something wrong. But a Tzadik Gomer, why would we have to cry? And the Rebbe goes through a whole shakla of Atari, and finally the Rebbe says that we know that it says in Chassidus that the Iker of tshuva is not only on Averis, but it is, as it says in Posik, the Ruach, which means the Neshama should return to Hashem the way it was given. That means that the Neshama Lamaila, before it comes down here to this world, the body, is no Metzias. It's completely bottled to Hashem. It doesn't feel its Metzias at all. When it comes down here, it becomes a Metzias. Down here, it's impossible to be bottled completely at your no Metzias. Even, like it says in Tanya, even the Tzadik Gomer that serves Hashem, but Ava B'Tainugim, the highest level of Avedas Hashem, is still a Yesh, is still a being. Yesh Mishaev. There is a person who loves Hashem. So we still say that there is a person who loves Hashem. That means that there is a Metzias of a person. And can't reach the level the way the Neshama was bottled to Hashem before. And that's why a Tzadik Gomer would cry. A Tzadik Gomer cries why he cannot reach the level of bittul to Hashem as the neshama was before it came down. Because he can't reach there, and therefore he cries. But then the Rebbe asks, since he can't reach it, it's impossible to reach it, and it's not his fault, so why would he cry? Why would it bother him? Why would he cry over it when he knows it can't help it anyway? So the Rebbe answered that be'emes, since neshama is there, etzem mahus is a lakus, it's only a lakus as it becomes a nivra, but it's really be'emes a lakus. So a neshama has the ability, has the power to go out of the gather of the creatures and to reach the level of bittul b'metzias as the neshama was before it came down to this world. And how does the neshama reach it? By being farbitter, he said, by being bitter, by feeling bad and crying. Why he's not in that level, that's a form that he really could unclothe himself of any metzias, and Itake becomes completely bottled to Hashem. So b'meila, when it says kol yishein bech, anybody who doesn't cry shows that something wrong. That goes on Tzadik Gomer also, because the Tzadik Gomer would also cry. And he would cry for this reason, that he's still missing his bittul. Because sof kol sof, he could reach that madrege. It's possible to reach that madrege through the real feeling bad about why he doesn't have that madrege. And I want to say that when we were standing by the Farbrengen and the Rebbe was talking the Sinyan, he was crying, he was choking up. And the feeling we got, and actually we discussed it after the Farbrengen between ourselves, that the feeling we got that the Rebbe was expressing his feelings. It wasn't just talking a inyan that it says in Kisvei Arizal. He lived it. You could see when he was talking about the feeling of missing the bittul to Hashem and b'meila you were able to reach it, he was expressing where he feels and expressing his feelings, his matzev. And he was living it rather than just talking about it. You could feel it that way. Now, what went through the Rebbe's mind, no one knows, but the feeling you got, the way he spoke about it as such, he got choked up and he was crying. You could see he was feeling this inyan that he was talking about. And this made such a great impression on everybody listening to the Rebbe speaking these inyanim and B'shas Ma'aseh crying, where he gives the feeling that he is Poshet expressing his feeling, what he lives.